Hi guys, welcome back. Today we're going to be discussing about the various hospital KPIs. As you know, right, the Q2 result season is upon us, and so even the hospital sector ka result also will start coming out one by one. And if you have to open the investor presentation and look at the data that is given, how do you analyze these different hospital KPIs, and how do you go forward about it is what we're going to be discussing today. Of course, I will not discuss any company specific. This is going to be a general thing, like how do you look at hospitals in general. Okay? So first thing first, we will be discussing the type of hospitals, and then after that the hospital KPIs, and then later how the different kind of payer mix that is there will affect your will affect your average revenue. Okay? So the first thing, let us start with the hospital. The different kind of hospitals that are there. Okay? I'll just share my screen. So I just have to show you one picture. It would be easier to explain, I think, for both me and you. Yeah. So I hope this picture is visible. Okay? So as you can see, the hospital that is there, the type of treatment that they provide, based on that, they're divided into four categories. Okay? The first one is your primary care. Primary care is basically the clinic that you find, आपके गले में जो clinic होता है ना, वो छोटा छोटा सा, that is called as primary care, right? Where you go, why do you go for primary care? Let's say when you have a fever, a small general diseases such as cough and cold, or any vaccination you have to get, that is when you go for primary care, right? So that is one kind. The second is your secondary care. Is secondary care may also, there are two different types. एक होता है general secondary care, and the next is your specialty secondary care hospitals. ठीक है? General secondary care is, let's say for example, let's say you need a certain disease specific, like a diabetic clinic ho gaya, ya ENT ka clinic, they treat a certain disease or an ailment. But having said that, here they limited the amount, it is more like a consultation that you go for. They won't do like a they won't do your treatment or your surgeries over here. Okay? The next thing is the specialty secondary care, where this is a small hospital providing, let's say for example dermatology ho gaya, yeah, another examples that I can give is gynecologies, right? Where you not only go for consultation, but also like certain small surgeries that you can get. And the main difference here also comes in terms of hospital bed. If you see the general secondary care, they might have beds ranging in the somewhere between 0 to 50 beds, whereas specialty secondary care might have somewhere between 50 to 100 beds. So the number of beds that are available in these kind of hospital are also more. Okay? The third thing is your tertiary care. Is tertiary care mein kya hote? Here they treat complex diseases, but again similar to secondary care, they are very specific. Okay? Like for example, if you go to, there is this hospital in Bangalore called as Narayan Hrudayalaya, where again Narayan Hrudayalaya has many things, but there is one hospital that caters only to the heart diseases. Okay? So certain specialty only for cardiovascular diseases they treat there. Or there is this another hospital called as Tata Cancer. I forgot the name, but where they treat only cancer related issues, right? Nothing else. So certain specific thing and only one specialty where they treat, that is called a single specialty. Now what is multi-specialty? Multi-specialty is of course where you treat more than one specialty, right? Wahan pe you will get even cardiovascular, it might be cancer, or it could be something related to neurosurgery also. Everything is treated. Okay? Quaternary care is your most complex one, where you're treating something like let's say an organ transplant, and yeah, organ transplant, and certain genetic rare disorders that are there, where you'll have to do some where you're also finding cure by doing some trial and things. This is where quaternary care comes into. And of course, with all the hospitals, that if you see the different kind of care that is there, whether it is primary, secondary, tertiary, or quaternary, other than the kind of diseases they cater to, the other difference is also the bed. In primary care, there is no bed. In secondary care, thoda 0 to 50 hoga. Specialty secondary care may 50 to 100. Single specialty may be 100 to 200. So as the bed size increases also, the specialty thing also, and that is how you segregate the hospitals. Now why am I specifying this so much in general, is because more the specialty that you have, more is your margins, right? Because agar aap clinic mein jate ho, your ticket size or your bill that is there that you give to the doctor, whatever you pay to the hospital, is less compared to, let's say, if you have to go to a diabetic clinic to get your checkup, versus let's say if you have to go to a specialty clinic where you have to get where you're getting a surgery for a cardiovascular disease or something, right? So as the specialty increases, of course, your margins are also higher in that hospital. Another how do I put this? Yeah, another example that I can give here is for your general secondary care and your specialty secondary care. Is if you see the specialty secondary care these days, you would have seen this Apollo ka small clinics are being established everywhere, right? And they're trying to be hyper local. One of the reasons I think even let me just close this. One of the reasons I think Apollo also has understood is the fact that it is not possible to set up hospital everywhere in every nook and corner because of the non availability of land. So what they've done is they've set up the small diabetic clinic ho gaya, orthopedic ho gaya, dentist ka small dentistry also there, to treat the to be hyper local and treat the local local patients. And of course, if there is a complex diseases from this secondary care only, they can refer the patients to their main hospitals. So this is more like secondary care. And in terms of talking about why I'm specifying here so much on this specialty is, if you see even Yatharth also, one of the examples that comes to my mind is, earlier when they started, they were having more general medicine ka treatment. General medicine used to be around 70% of their revenue, and super specialty jo tha, it used to be around 20 to 25%. Okay? But as the years went by, you've seen that right now, Yatharth has around 70%, I think 70 to 75 in that range, coming from super specialty, whereas general hospital is around 25 to 30, right? And because of that, you will see that there are other hospital metrics that are there are better, right? So this is one of the reason. And of course, right, agar aap general medicine cater kar rahe ho, then there is so much competition also on the other end, right? It becomes very tough to survive. And also, like I told you, it is a very small ticket item. Again, tough to survive, and that small ticket item, you'll have to keep giving discount and XYZ things. So that is the reason always prefer a hospital with, the more the specialty or the hospital is, the better. Next thing we go is the hospital KPIs, right? Now, the first thing in any hospital KPI you will see is the number of beds jo hota hai. You would have seen that, always people keep talking about, number of beds kitna hai, number of beds kitna increase hua hai. Number of beds here are nothing, if you see a hospital talking about number of beds, it is no different than, let's say, talking about, let's say, a general industry talking about unka capex karna, okay? Because think about this, more is the number of beds, more is more are the number of beds, the more patients that I can treat, right? So this is their way of doing an investment. This is their way of doing a capex. Now, not necessarily every time, that capex has to be done in terms of setting up a new hospital. Like I told you, no, availability of land and setting up such a big thing can be an issue. So what they can do is, they can just set up, add an existing facility where in their already hospital, and just increase the number of beds, add more number of beds. Adding number of beds just increases, that they're doing more capex, that there is demand here for this hospital. That is what it indicates. The second thing is here is your occupancy, which is the most critical parameter. There are three critical parameters that you have to check: occupancy, average revenue per occupied bed, and average length of stay. Okay. Occupancy here is more like, if there are 100 beds in a hospital, not necessarily that every 100 bed is going to be occupied, right? One of the reason is, if you go to any hospital, there will be, like, let's say, agar 100, if it is a general hospital also, 100 beds hoga, to at least 10 beds will be for ICU. Now, not necessarily that, let's say, even all 100 beds that are, all 100 people that are getting admitted, they might be getting admitted for general medicine, not ICU. They might not need that critical care. So although there are 100 patients that are coming and you have 100 beds, since they're not specifically to ICU, or they might not be specific for certain diseases that are there, right? You will not be able to use those beds. So inherently, because of that nature of the the business that is there, it is very, very tough to reach that 100% occupancy level that is there, right? Let's say another reason also could be, like, if you are a super specialty hospital, you have every department, and every department will have certain beds allocated, right? And let's say, nobody attends that department, no patient is coming, but other departments are coming. Even in that case also, you will see that the occupancy will never be 100%. It is very rare cases such as COVID that we saw, because that is like an out of the blue case, or very it is an unknown event that happened in the market, and that is why it breaks all the metrics. So one of the reason is that. The other reason also, when you see a new hospital coming up, okay, any new hospital that is there, it takes at least 2 to 3 years for that hospital to reach around 40 to 50% ka occupancy level. Okay. Occupancy is nothing but, again, reiterating the fact that if there are, how many beds are occupied. Like I told you, out of 100 beds, not like, see, you might set up all the beds that you need, right? But tomorrow, if there is no patient that is coming, how will you make make money at the end of the day. See, that is why occupancy is way more important than number of beds. Okay, because at the end of the day, unless and until the bed is not occupied by any patient, no hospital will make money, right? So that is about occupancy. Here, occupancy is also more like I always keep talking about in my FMCG or my other videos. Generally in my B2C business that I keep talking about, volume and value, there are two metrics to it, right? In any business that you talk about, occupancy is more like a volume here in any hospital, okay? Because more number of the patients that come in, you know, one by one, more is my volume, okay? The other thing is the other metric, the third metric that we're going to be talking about is average revenue per occupied bed. Average revenue per occupied is, from the name only you can understand, right? Kitna aap charge kar rahe ho ek bed ka, okay? Now, why are you taking average revenue? Because see, when you're talking about a super specialty hospital, depending on the type of surgery, there will be different, how do you tell you, different price, okay, based on that. So you can't, that is why you'll have to take an average. Maybe somebody for one treatment might be spending 2 lakhs, somebody might be spending hardly 50,000 because his disease is not that serious. So as a result, you'll have to take average revenue. So basically, एक bed का कितना revenue है, ठीक है, एक bed ने कितना कमाया है उस hospital में, that is what is called as average revenue per occupied bed. Another thing also can be, another reason for average revenue per occupied bed also is because, there are different kind of beds in a hospital too, right? It could be a normal bed, deluxe room, that room, etc. So based on all of these things, what is the amount how much money is that hospital earning per bed? ठीक है, कितना कमा रहे हैं दिन में, that is called as average revenue per occupied bed. The next thing is your average length of stay, ठीक है? Average length of stay, like the name tells, how long, how long does a patient stay in a hospital, right? Like average length of stay, some might be staying for 2 days, some for 5, some for 10 days. Combinedly, totally, कितना average length है? Now see, एवरेज रेवेन्यू पर ऑक्यूपाइड बेड जो था वो था वैल्यू, ठीक है? मतलब आप प्राइस, बिकॉज एक बेड का प्राइस आप तो इंक्रीज करते रहते हो, सर्जरी का प्राइस पे इंक्रीज होता है, राइट? सो दैट इज एवरेज रेवेन्यू पर ऑक्यूपाइड बेड. सो ऑक्यूपेंसी इज वॉल्यूम, एवरेज रेवेन्यू पर ऑक्यूपाइड बेड इज वैल्यू, ठीक है? एंड ऑक्यूपेंसी इज मोर लाइक योर केपेक्स जो कर रहा है, सॉरी नॉट ऑक्यूपेंसी, नंबर ऑफ बेड इज मोर लाइक योर केपेक्स जो कर रहा है. सो ऑल ऑफ द थ्री मेट्रिक्स दैट आर देयर, नंबर ऑफ बेड्स जो हो गया, ऑक्यूपेंसी जो हो गया, एवरेज रेवेन्यू पर ऑक्यूपाइड बेड जो हो गया, you would want all of these three ideally to increase, ठीक है? But ALOS, like I told you, average length of stay, the number of days that a patient stays in a hospital, the average number of days, you would want this to decrease, okay? Why? Because this is why, like I explained you, this is more like an efficiency parameter, okay? And the formula is basically like कितना दिन वो patient रहता है उस hospital में, divided by the total admissions, divided by the total number of people getting admitted in the hospital. I mean, you don't have to go into so much detail also. Just understand what average length of stay is. Why do you need this parameter to be going down? See, more my bed is free, more I will be able to treat patients, even more number of patients, right? जितना मेरा patients बढ़ेगा, जितना मेरा volume बढ़ेगा, उतना मेरा occupancy बढ़ेगा. More the volume growth, better is for me. That is one of the reasons, ठीक है? And why it is also called as efficiency parameter is, let's say if a hospital is telling, you're telling me that the average length of stay is like more than, let's say, usually for hospitals I've seen it is between 2 to 5 days, depending on the kind of hospital. You will say if it is more than 7 days or 8 days, it is a bad rep to the hospital, right? आप indirectly बोल रहे हो जो भी यहाँ पे जा रहा है वो तो ठीक होके नहीं आ रहा है, right? You would need the patient to recover faster. One is because in a hospital you don't want the diseases to be spread or the infection to be spread. Not only that, you want to have a good rep कि like जो भी यहाँ पे आ रहे हैं वो ठीक होके जा रहे हैं, ठीक है? And they're getting discharged very soon, ठीक है? The other reason also, you might counter question me with like, isn't it better that a patient stays for a longer period in a time in hospital? I mean, that is how hospital will make money. You need to understand that the hospital makes more money by for a surgery या कोई treatment होगा, ठीक है? That is where the bulk of the money comes. After a certain point, जो होगा, like, if they are in ICU also, what happens is they are getting not charged for the treatment, but they're getting charged for that room or for that per bed, which is not going to contribute more to them, right? वो जो बड़ा सा वो amount है, it comes from the main surgery that they do. That is the reason you need that average length of stay to be coming down, average length of stay to be as low as possible. Because like I told you, the more soon I discharge, I can get a new patient, I can perform, treat him, do a surgery on him, and get the money. And of course, discharge, again, a win-win situation. The hospital also makes money, the patient also gets discharged, and a win situation is, of course, they have a good rep here, okay? And the last thing is your inpatient and outpatient volume. Inpatient volume, jo hota hai, that are the ones who get admitted. ठीक है. And outpatient volumes are those who either go for consultation. To be put merely in textbook terms are like, those people who stay in the hospital for more than 24 hours versus someone who stays for less than 24 hours. But I wouldn't like to classify that way. It is more, I would say, like inpatient volume are those, let's say, who come and get admitted. Because if that person is getting admitted in that hospital, his expenses will increase, right? Like, he'll have to pay for the bed, he'll have to pay for the surgery, he'll have to pay for the different kind of tests. Versus, let's say, an outpatient volume hai. Outpatient volume kya karte hai? Just he will come, he will take an appointment, take consultation leta hai, and the doctor will prescribe him the test or the medicines that are there. Ultimately, you see, right, the inpatient volume will make more money for the hospital compared to the outpatient outpatient, right? So that is why you would want the inpatient volume at the end of the day to increase more than the outpatient volume, or at least the ratio of inpatient to outpatient. You would want the inpatient volume to be more than that of your outpatient. So ultimately, if you see all the 5 parameters that are there: number of beds, occupancy, average revenue per occupied bed, average length of stay, and inpatient and outpatient volume. Out of that, you wanted all the 4 parameters that were there. We need the number of beds to be increasing. We need the occupancy to be increasing. Like I told you, occupancy is like volume metric, right? Jitna zyada patient aayega, utna zyada I could be treating them, and more volume I can generate here, right? So occupancy. The third thing is your average revenue per occupied bed. Average revenue per occupied bed is nothing but, how much is that? How much is the hospital earning? Like, what is the average money a bed is making? And this is like a value segment, right? Because this is here you can increase the price, more like a price hike price thing, the value growth that you talk about. Then we need the inpatient volume to be increasing compared to the outpatient volume. Of course, always the ratio to be more. And then the last thing is your average length of stay. Only this is the only parameter, the average length of stay that you see. This is the only parameter that we need to be decreasing. Like I told you, more the bulk of the money that comes is from surgery, and the more people I treat and I get out, the more patient that I can treat, and in that way, not just my occupancy will go up, even my average revenue per occupied bed, my both as my ALOS goes down, as my average length of stay goes down, my क्या बोलते हैं occupancy as well as average revenue per occupied bed goes up. ठीक है? So this is how you look at the different hospital KPIs. ठीक है? And the other thing that is there, if you have to see, is the payer mix जो होता है. You will see एक hospital का जो है, there are different kind of payer mix. आप जो भी hospital का PPT देख लो, उसमें दिखेगा आपको. You will see there is a division, right? Payer mix का मतलब क्या है? Payer कौन होते हैं? हम होते हैं, right? Patients are payer. So कौन से patient आते हैं? There will be one kind of patient, who are paying out of their own pocket. These are the people who don't have health insurance या कोई भी subsidy में नहीं आता. Right? And I think this is fairly common in India. Although right now we are seeing, huge people are being aware of health insurance and all, but still a majority portion of India, pays out of pocket. They don't have any health insurance. So this is one. The second is your health insurance ka jo hai, right? People have health insurance and they get admitted in hospital, and health insurance pays on their behalf. Okay? And the third is your government schemes, right? There are certain section of the society that will not be able to afford this very good treatment in private hospitals. So of course, this it is mandatory for hospital to reserve certain beds. Depending on the state government and central government, it is mandatory for them to reserve certain amount of beds. And as the if you get registered with via the government through the scheme, and if the bed is available, you get treated and the government pays in return. Like, that is how it works between the three type of payer mix. Now here, why am I specifying this? Let's say if you're someone who's paying from your own pocket, right? There are two things here happens for the hospital. One is, if you're paying for the average revenue per occupied bed, if you're coming from a normal payer mix, if you're paying out of your pocket, what happens is the hospital can increase. There is a flexibility for them to increase the price at their own pace, right? They don't have to depend on anyone. If you see Rainbow Children Hospital जो है, they increased जो cash segment से pay करता है, right? उनको they have increased all the surgery price या bed price जो भी होता है by 5%. ठीक है? As much increase the price क्या होगा? मेरा price जितना increase करेगा, मेरा average revenue per occupied bed will go up, right? My value growth will be more. ठीक है? So this is one. One is the flexibility in terms of price. The second is, let's say when you're paying from your own pocket, what happens is, until you pay, also the hospital won't discharge you. They'll put a case on you, right? So what happens immediately after you're treated, the hospital gets some money. So here the working capital cycle jo hai, it becomes very, it is fairly shorter for them when you pay out of your own pocket. And that is why for a hospital, if you have like majority coming from a cash segment, it is helpful. How it is helpful in ARPOB, that's what I explained. The next segment is your आपका health insurance का segment है. People who pay via health insurance, or let's say the health insurance pay. Now, how does this affect the ARPOB, average revenue per occupied bed? ठीक है. How does this affect the value growth? The first thing is, see, it is a win-win. Is it better for a hospital to, have more cash segment? Or is it better for a hospital to have more from health insurance segment? It is like a win-win situation in both, in a health insurance space. See, for example, if you are buying a insurance, ठीक है, and if you see there are many hospitals, you would want what? You would want the option to have as many hospitals that are there. Okay. So it is important for an insurance company to go get almost all the hospitals in their network. Why? Because their client would want that. Okay. You would prefer a hospital that has, let's say, 100 cashless network in cashless network, versus, let's say, some other insurance that has 50 cashless network. That is one point. Okay. On the other hand, it is also important for hospital to be in certain in this insurance people plan, because see, if you know, if God forbid, but if I were to be sick, and if I see that, there is a certain there is Fortis in my kya bolte, in my cashless network in my hospital, and let's say there is another hospital, I would prefer Fortis any day compared to, because I know that is where I can, the health insurance will pay on my behalf, right, where I can redeem it, right? So that is also the reason. Okay, so it is both a win-win space, because for both the hospital as well as your insurance. Okay. But here what happens is, once when the patient gets admitted and they have to renew a health insurance, the entire time when the health insurance gives the cash to the hospital, right, the cycle can range anywhere between 30 to 60 days, depending on the hospital and the insurance policy का जो भी agreement हो. इसके वजह से क्या होता है, because the cash you don't get immediately in the hospital, वो cash crunch या working capital cycle में थोड़ा सा और लंबा होता है, compared to, let's say, someone who's paying via cash. ठीक है. That is one thing. The other thing is also in terms of price hike जो you take. ठीक है. This the hospital and the insurance will always have an agreement. Again, it depends case to case. It depends on the hospital and the insurance company, right? That they'll have an agreement. That they can take a price hike maybe after 2 years, or maybe after 3 years, or maybe after a year or two. So what happens until then? उनका value growth क्या होते हैं, उसके वजह से कम हो जाता है. The average revenue per occupied bed में इसके वजह से भी impact होता है. Again, in Rainbow Children Hospital also you can see that normal जो cash segment से pay किया था, उन्होंने, for them they have taken a price hike of 5%, versus, let's say, जो insurance का जो scheme है, for that it has been 2%, and that only for Hyderabad cluster, क्योंकि Hyderabad cluster में I think their contract is for 2 years, versus for other people it is more. ठीक है. So this is the way, how different kind of payer mix जो होता है, working capital cycle में affect भी होता है, and also average revenue per occupied में affect होता है. ठीक है. The last one is, of course, the government. Of course, it is a least preferred compared to the other two. Don't have to talk about it also. So that is why you will see even if you go see, you will see that Fortis has much better ARPOB. I think their ARPOB, average revenue per occupied bed, is around 60 to 70, I think, in that range. I'm not sure about the exact number. One of the reason is because I think the government pay जो होता है, government का mix जो होता है, it is hardly 10%, versus I think majority comes from the cash as well as the health insurance. Similarly, if you see Jupiter का भी, if you see, the average revenue per occupied bed is around 57 to 60,000 rupees. One of the reason is because majority is coming, I think, from the cash payment. It is 50, 55, and the normal payment जो होता है, the health insurance is around 40 to 45, and the government जो mix है, the seats that are reserved or the beds that are reserved for the government is hardly 1%. Because of that, although they're a very regional hospital, सिर्फ 3 ही hospital है, their average revenue per occupied bed is so good. But on the same hand, although you see that Yatharth as well as Jupiter that is there, दोनों भी regional hospital है, दोनों started around the same time, probably one in 2010, one in 2013, 3 years का difference है start होने में. You will see that Yatharth का and Yatharth is also in super specialty. You will see that the average revenue per occupied bed is a little bit less. It is around 25 to 30K in that range. Why? Because Yatharth का 25% का payer mix आ रहा है government का scheme से. ठीक है. And here, of course, one price hike, it is very difficult, and the other thing is also, again, because of the scheme, that is that it is difficult to generate money from there also. The working capital cycle is huge. So that is the reason. So now you understand how different kind of payer mix जो होता है, like, it affects the working capital, and which which payer mix is better. Okay, just to sum it off, right, there are different kinds of hospital based on that, what kind of treatments that they provide, what kind of specialty that they provide, you can cater, you can differentiate them into different categories. Then comes your hospital KPIs jo aap dekhte ho. Even in terms of hospital KPI also, you need three things: occupancy, average revenue per occupied bed, as well as average length of stay. You need your occupancy and average revenue per occupied bed to go up. It is like volume as well as value growth. And you need your ALS to go down. As your ALOS goes down, your volume growth as well as your value growth goes up. And then after that, you will need your payer mix jo hai, I mean, this is something that I don't think any hospital has a say on it, but just want to show you like how different kind of payer mix will affect different, the hospital ka important important metric jo hota hai, which is value growth. So yeah, that's that about hospitals and how do you analyze these hospitals. I hope when Q2 comes out, you guys can just open the result doc and just open the investor presentation, and will be able to analyze the result for yourself. Also, please do read the con call, because that is where the real gems are. Okay, so yeah, that's that for today. I hope you'll have a great day. Take care.